I stood in my husband's funeral, clutching the weight of 30 years of marriage, believing I'd already faced the worst pain imaginable. Then my son walked in with her, the woman who'd been my husband's secret for years, and declared she was the love of his life. My world didn't just crack, it shattered. I stayed silent, but not because I was broken. I was waiting. Welcome to the Betrayal Revenge channel, where stories come alive through voices you've never heard told this way before. Join us as we unravel secrets that change everything. It all began 3 months ago, on a rainy afternoon I'll never forget. The church smelled of damp wool and lilies, their petals already curling at the edges as if they knew the truth before I did. I stood by Vincent's closed casket, my black dress clinging to my skin, too tight around my chest, making every breath a conscious effort. 30 years of marriage, 3 decades of building a life together, and here I was, a widow at 58, surrounded by faces that blurred into a sea of pity. Colleagues from Vincent's law firm, neighbors who'd brought casseroles, distant cousins who'd flown in, they all murmured condolences, their voices a low hum like static. I nodded, smiled faintly, but inside I was numb. I thought grief was the worst of it. I was wrong. Something felt off, though I couldn't name it. A prickle at the back of my neck, like the air itself was holding its breath. I scanned the room, searching for Ethan, my son. He hadn't answered my calls since Vincent's diagnosis 6 months ago, but I'd hoped, no, I'd prayed, he'd be here. He was 32 now, a man with his own life, but he was still my boy. The one who used to cling to my hand during thunderstorms, who'd draw me lopsided hearts on Mother's Day. Surely he'd come to say goodbye to his father. The heavy oak doors creaked open, and there he was. Ethan. My heart leapt, then froze. He wasn't alone. A woman clung to his arm, her black dress sleek and tailored, hugging her frame in a way that felt too deliberate for a funeral. Her auburn hair was swept into a chignon, her lips painted a bold red that stood out against the muted grays of the church. I didn't know her, but something about her presence twisted my stomach. She wasn't just a guest. She was a statement. "Mom!" Ethan's voice cut through the murmurs, sharp and unfamiliar. He stood in the center aisle, his broad shoulders squared, his eyes, Vincent's eyes, locked on mine, but there was no warmth in them, no trace of the boy I'd raised. "This is Sienna Vaughn," he said, his tone clipped, deliberate, "the real woman in Dad's life." The words hit like a physical blow. Gasps rippled through the pews, but I barely heard them. The room tilted, the lily's cloying scent turning sour in my throat. Sienna stepped closer, her lips curling into a smile, not of sorrow, but of triumph. She didn't speak, but her eyes did, gleaming with a quiet, vicious satisfaction. I gripped the edge of the pew, my knuckles white, as Ethan's words echoed in my skull. The real woman in Dad's life. What did that even mean? Vincent and I had built a home, a family, 30 years. How could there be another woman? Ethan reached into his jacket and pulled out a cream-colored envelope, its edges crisp, official. "This is Dad's will," he said, his voice louder now, as if he wanted the entire church to hear. "It's clear. The house, our house, belongs to Sienna and me now. You don't have a place here anymore." My breath caught. A sharp, ragged sound. The house, our Victorian villa in the mountains, with its wraparound porch and the apple tree we'd planted when Ethan was born. The place where I'd nursed Vincent through his illness, where I'd cooked Sunday dinners, where I'd thought we'd grow old together. Gone, just like that? I looked at Ethan, searching for a flicker of doubt, a hint of the son I knew, but his face was stone, his jaw set, as if I were a stranger. "Ethan," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Why?" He didn't answer. Instead, Sienna leaned in, her perfume, something heavy like jasmine and ambition, enveloping me. "Vincent always said you'd be difficult," she murmured, her voice low, meant only for me. "But it's over, Nora. You've lost." The room spun. I pressed a hand to my chest, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. Lost? Lost what? My husband was dead, my son was standing against me, and now my home was being ripped away. I wanted to scream, to demand answers, but my throat was tight, my words trapped. The mourners stared, some with pity, others with curiosity, as if I were a character in a tragedy they'd paid to watch. I felt exposed, raw, like a wound laid bare. Ethan stepped forward, holding out the envelope. "Take it," he said, his voice devoid of emotion. "It's all legal. You have until tomorrow to pack your things." My fingers trembled as I took the envelope, its weight heavier than it should have been. I didn't open it. I couldn't. Not here. Not in front of them. Sienna's smile widened, a predator sensing victory. "We'll make it quick," she said, her tone almost cheerful. "No need to drag this out." The service blurred after that. The priest's words, the hymns, the shuffle of feet as people filed past the casket, they all faded into a haze. I stood frozen, clutching the envelope, aware of Sienna sitting in the front pew, where I should have been, accepting condolences as if she were the widow. Ethan sat beside her, his gaze fixed on the altar, refusing to meet my eyes. I wanted to run to him, to shake him, to ask what I'd done to make him hate me so much. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not yet. When it was over, I drove home alone, the rain smearing the windshield, mirroring the chaos in my mind. The villa loomed ahead, its windows dark, the porch swing swaying in the wind. I parked and sat there, the envelope unopened on the passenger seat. My hands shook as I traced the edges of Vincent's name on the paper. How had it come to this? What had I missed? 30 years and I hadn't seen the cracks. Or had I, and chosen to ignore them? Inside, the house was too quiet, the air thick with the scent of Vincent's cologne, still lingering in the halls. I walked to the living room, where his portrait hung above the fireplace, a gift from Ethan on our 20th anniversary. His smile in the painting was warm, confident, the man I'd loved. But now it felt like a lie. I sank onto the couch, the envelope still in my hands. I didn't want to read it, didn't want to see the proof of my erasure, but I had to know. With a deep breath, I tore it open. The words swam before my eyes. Last will and testament of Vincent Callahan. Page after page detailed his wishes, but one paragraph stood out, stark and brutal. The house, our accounts, his assets, everything went to Ethan, with a provision for Sienna as his trusted partner. I was left with nothing but a small stipend, barely enough to rent a studio apartment. My name appeared only once, as if I were an afterthought. I read it again, then a third time, hoping I'd misunderstood. I hadn't. A sob broke free, then another. I pressed my hand to my mouth, trying to stifle the sound, but it was no use. The betrayal wasn't just Vincent's, it was Ethan's too. My son, my only child, had stood in that church and declared war on me. Why? What had Vincent told him? What lies had he woven to turn my boy into a stranger? The doorbell rang, sharp and insistent. I froze, my heart pounding. Through the window, I saw Ethan's car in the driveway, Sienna's silhouette beside him. They were here already, to claim what they believed was theirs. I wiped my tears, forcing myself to stand. My legs felt unsteady, but I straightened my spine, clutching the envelope like a shield. They wanted to erase me, to rewrite my life as if I'd never existed. But something in me stirred, a spark. Faint but stubborn. I wasn't done yet. I walked to Vincent's study, my steps slow, deliberate. On his desk sat a framed photo of us on our wedding day, his arm around my waist, my smile radiant. I picked it up, tracing his face with my fingertip. "Who were you, Vincent?" I whispered. "And what did you do to our son?" The doorbell rang again, more demanding this time. I set the photo down and took a shaky breath. Whatever they planned to do, whatever they thought they'd won, I wasn't just the grieving widow they expected. I was Nora Callahan, and I would find the truth. But first, I had to survive this moment. I turned toward the door, my resolve hardening with each step. They thought they'd broken me. They were wrong. What kind of man lives a lie for 15 years, hiding it from the woman who loved him? I'd lost my home, my son, and now, it seemed, the truth about my marriage. But something told me Vincent hadn't taken all his secrets to the grave. I needed answers, and I wasn't leaving until I found them. It was the day after the funeral, and the rain had stopped. leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet earth and pine. I stood outside our villa, the key trembling in my hand. Ethan's ultimatum echoed in my mind. "You have until tomorrow to pack your things." The house loomed before me, its gabled roof and ivy-covered walls, once a symbol of our family's stability, now a monument to my betrayal. I wasn't supposed to be here, not after Sienna's smug smile and Ethan's cold dismissal, but I couldn't leave, not yet, not without knowing why. The lock clicked, and I stepped inside, the silence pressing against my ears. The air was stale, tinged with the faint musk of Vincent's cologne, as if he'd only just left the room. My footsteps echoed on the hardwood floor, each one a reminder that this place was no longer mine. I didn't know what I was looking for, but I felt it, a pull, an instinct that there was something here, something Vincent had left behind. I moved through the living room, past the fireplace where his portrait still hung, his painted eyes following me. I avoided looking at it. I couldn't bear the lie in his smile. I ended up in his study, the one place he'd always kept private. The room smelled of leather and old paper, the shelves lined with law books and files from his firm. His mahogany desk sat in the center, its surface polished to a gleam, untouched since his final days. I ran my fingers along the edge, remembering how he'd sit here late at night, his brow furrowed, claiming he was tying up loose ends. I'd believed him. I'd believed everything. A memory flickered. Vincent, 6 months ago, before the cancer took hold, locking a drawer with a small silver key. He'd brushed it off when I asked, saying it was just client documents, nothing for me to worry about. That key, where was it? I rummaged through the desk, my hands shaking as I opened drawers, sifted through pens and paper clips, searching for anything out of place. Nothing. Then I noticed the faint outline of a panel in the wall behind the desk, barely visible unless you knew to look. A safe. My pulse quickened. Vincent had never mentioned a safe. I pressed my fingers against the panel, feeling for a catch. It clicked open, revealing a small black safe embedded in the wall. The keypad glowed faintly, demanding a code. I froze. A code. What would Vincent have chosen? I tried our anniversary. Nothing. Ethan's birthday. Nothing. My hands hovered over the keys, my mind racing. Then I remembered Vincent's habit of reusing passwords, his arrogance in thinking no one would ever check. I typed his law firm's founding year, 1995. The safe beeped, and the door swung open. Inside was a single item, a leather-bound journal, its cover worn but intact. My breath caught. Vincent's handwriting was unmistakable, the same precise script I'd seen on love notes and grocery lists. I sank into his chair, the journal heavy in my hands, and opened it. The first page was dated a year ago, just before his diagnosis. "Nora deserves the truth," it began, "but I don't know if I have the courage to give it to her." My heart pounded as I read, each word a knife. Vincent confessed to an affair with Sienna that had lasted 15 years. 15 years of lies, of stolen moments, of a parallel life I'd never suspected. He described meeting her at a conference, her ambition matching his own, her willingness to play his game. He wrote of setting her up in an apartment, funneling money from our accounts to fund her lifestyle. But it wasn't just the affair that made my stomach churn. He'd manipulated Ethan, too. "I showed Ethan forged letters," Vincent wrote, claiming Nora was unfaithful, that she'd squandered our savings. "I needed him to trust Sienna, to see her as family. He believed me. He's always believed me." Tears blurred my vision, but I kept reading, unable to stop. Vincent admitted to crafting a false will, one that would leave me with nothing, orchestrated with Sienna's help. "She thinks she's won," he wrote. "She doesn't know I've kept this journal, my insurance against her greed." The room seemed to close in, the walls pressing against me. 15 years. Half our marriage a lie. And Ethan, my Ethan, had been poisoned against me, fed lies until he saw me as the enemy. I wanted to scream, to tear the pages apart, but I forced myself to keep going. The final entry, written just weeks before his death, was different. "I'm dying," Vincent wrote, "and the weight of my sins is too heavy. Nora, if you ever find this, know that I loved you, even as I betrayed you. I was weak. Sienna was a mistake. Ethan was my greatest failure." I closed the journal, my hands trembling so badly I nearly dropped it. Loved me? How could he claim that after what he'd done? The man I'd mourned, the man I'd cared for through his illness, wasn't the man I'd thought he was. He was a stranger, a manipulator who'd dismantled our family with surgical precision, and yet his words lingered. Ethan was my greatest failure. What did that mean? Had Vincent regretted turning our son against me? Or was there more he hadn't confessed? I stood, clutching the journal to my chest, my mind a storm of questions. The study felt suffocating, the air thick with Vincent's presence. I needed to get out, to think. But as I turned to leave, I heard the front door creak open. Footsteps echoed in the hall, heavy, deliberate. "Nora?" Ethan's voice, sharp and accusing. "What are you doing here?" Panic surged through me. I slipped the journal into my purse, my heart racing. He couldn't know about this, not yet. Not until I understood the full scope of Vincent's lies. I stepped out of the study, forcing my voice to stay steady. "I came to pack," I said, meeting his gaze. His eyes narrowed, searching my face, but he didn't press. Sienna stood behind him, her arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "You shouldn't be here," Ethan said, his tone colder than the day before. "The movers are coming tomorrow. You need to be gone." I nodded, my throat tight. "I will be." But as I walked past them, the journal burned in my purse, a secret weapon I hadn't yet learned to wield. Vincent's words had torn me apart, but they'd also given me something. Clarity. I wasn't the victim they thought I was. Not anymore. I would fight, not just for the house, but for the truth, for Ethan, for myself. How do you fight a lie that's taken everything from you? I held Vincent's journal, its pages heavy with truths I wasn't ready to face. My husband's betrayal had cost me my home, my son, and my trust, but it had also lit a fire in me. I wasn't alone anymore. I just didn't know it yet. The morning after I found Vincent's journal, I sat in my car outside a modest brick house in the suburbs, the engine still running. The rain had returned, a soft drizzle that blurred the world beyond the windshield. My purse lay on the passenger seat, the journal inside it like a ticking bomb. I hadn't slept, hadn't eaten. My eyes burned from tears and exhaustion, but I couldn't stay in that hotel room, staring at the ceiling, replaying Vincent's words. 15 years, Sienna, Ethan. I needed help, someone who'd listen without judgment. That's why I was here, at Teresa Langley's doorstep. Teresa and I had been friends since college, back when life was simpler before Vincent's charm and ambition pulled me into his orbit. We'd drifted apart over the years. His doing, I realized now, another thread in his web of control. But Teresa had reached out after Vincent's obituary ran, her voicemail warm and insistent. "Nora, I'm here, whatever you need." I hadn't called her back then. I'd been too raw, too lost in grief. Now, with nowhere else to turn, I hoped her offer still stood. I knocked, my knuckles hesitant against the door. It swung open almost immediately, and there she was, Teresa, her dark hair streaked with gray, her brown eyes soft with concern. "Nora," she said, pulling me into a hug before I could speak. Her embrace smelled of lavender and coffee, grounding me in a way I hadn't felt in days. "My God, what's happened to you?" We sat in her cozy kitchen, sunlight filtering through lace curtains, casting patterns on the worn oak table. The air was warm with the scent of fresh bread, a stark contrast to the sterile chill of the hotel. I told her everything. The funeral, Ethan's betrayal, Sienna's smirk, the journal. My voice broke as I described Vincent's confessions, the affair, the lies he'd fed Ethan. Teresa listened, her hand resting on mine, her silence a balm to my fractured heart. When I finished, she didn't offer platitudes or try to fix it. She just squeezed my hand and said, "You're not going through this alone." "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "The will, the house, it's all legal, Teresa. Ethan hates me, and Sienna. She's one. But this journal..." I pulled it from my purse, its leather cover cool against my fingers. "It's proof Vincent lied. I just don't know how to use it." Teresa's eyes narrowed, a spark of determination flickering. You need someone who can fight this, Nora. Someone who knows how to dig into the kind of mess Vincent left behind. She stood, grabbing her phone from the counter. I know just the person. An hour later, we were in Teresa's living room, the journal open on the coffee table. Across from me sat Eleanor Briggs, a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a tailored blazer, her posture straight, exuding the kind of quiet authority that made you trust her instantly. Teresa had introduced her as a forensic accountant, retired but legendary in her field. Eleanor's unraveled more financial conspiracies than most FBI agents, Teresa had said, only half joking. Eleanor flipped through the journal, her expression unreadable. Vincent was thorough, she said finally, her voice crisp but not unkind. This isn't just a confession, it's a roadmap. Dates, accounts, transactions. He documented his affair with Sienna, yes, but also how he manipulated Ethan and altered the will. If we can verify this, it's enough to challenge the will's validity. My heart leapt, a fragile hope taking root. You think I can get the house back? Prove Ethan's wrong about me? Eleanor set the journal down, her gaze steady. It's not just about the house, Nora. This journal suggests Vincent committed fraud, diverting funds, forging documents. If we can trace those transactions, we can prove the will was part of a broader scheme. But it won't be easy. Whoever helped Vincent cover this up will fight back. I swallowed, the weight of her words settling in. Sienna, I said. She's behind this, isn't she? Possibly, Eleanor said, tapping a page. But Vincent mentions others in his firm. We need to know who else was involved. She leaned forward, her voice lowering. Nora, this is a legal battle now. If you're willing, I can start digging. I have contacts, lawyers, investigators. We can build a case, but it'll take time. Time. The word felt like a luxury I didn't have. Ethan's deadline loomed. Movers would arrive tomorrow to strip the house bare. But Eleanor's confidence, her calm certainty, anchored me. For the first time since the funeral, I felt a flicker of control, a sense that I could fight back. I'm in, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Whatever it takes. Teresa smiled, her eyes bright with pride. That's my Nora. She reached for my hand again, and I felt a warmth I'd almost forgotten. Friendship, loyalty, the kind of bond Vincent had tried to erase. Eleanor gathered her notes, her movements precise. I'll need access to Vincent's financial records, bank statements, firm accounts, anything you can provide. And this journal stays with me. It's our leverage. She paused, her eyes softening. Nora, you've been through hell. But you're stronger than you know. We'll get to the truth. As she spoke, I saw myself reflected in her words. Not the broken widow from the funeral, but a woman who could fight, who could reclaim what was hers. I nodded, a quiet resolve settling in my chest. Thank you, I said, meaning it more than I could express. We spent the next hour going over details, Vincent's firm, his habits, the accounts I knew about. I gave Eleanor everything I could remember, though it wasn't much. Vincent had always handled our finances, insisting it was his job to protect me. Another lie, I realized now. Another way to keep me in the dark. Teresa poured us coffee, her presence a steady comfort as we worked. For the first time in days, I wasn't alone. I had allies, a plan, a purpose. As I left Teresa's house, the journal now in Eleanor's hands, the drizzle had stopped, and a sliver of sunlight broke through the clouds. I stood by my car, breathing in the clean, wet air. The road ahead was uncertain, daunting. A legal battle against Sienna, against Vincent's legacy of lies, would test me in ways I couldn't yet imagine. But I wasn't running anymore, I was fighting. How deep does a betrayal go before you see the puppet strings? Vincent's journal had exposed his lies, but I sensed there was more. Someone pulling the threads, orchestrating my ruin. I thought Sienna was the enemy. I was wrong. 3 days had passed since I left Teresa's house, the journal now in Eleanor's capable hands. I was staying in a small motel on the edge of town, its neon sign flickering outside my window, casting a sickly glow across the room. The air smelled of stale cigarette smoke and cheap air freshener, a far cry from the villa's polished wood and lavender. My suitcase sat unpacked in the corner, a reminder that I had nowhere to call home. But I wasn't grieving anymore. I was planning. Eleanor had called me that morning, her voice clipped with urgency. "Nora, I found something. Meet me at my office, noon." She hadn't elaborated, but the edge in her tone told me it was big. I drove through the city, the skyline a blur of glass and steel, my hands tight on the wheel. Vincent's journal had cracked open the truth, but it also raised questions I couldn't shake. Who else had known about his affair? Who had helped him forge the will? Sienna was part of it, but she didn't have the power to manipulate Vincent's firm or Ethan's trust. Someone else did. Eleanor's office was in a nondescript building downtown, its lobby all gray marble and hushed voices. She greeted me at the door, her gray hair pulled back, her eyes sharp with focus. "Come in," she said, leading me to a conference room where papers and laptops covered a long table. The air was thick with the scent of coffee and ink, a battlefield of documents. Teresa was there too, her warm smile a brief comfort before Eleanor closed the door. "Sit," Eleanor said, sliding a folder across the table. Her voice was steady, but there was a fire in her eyes, like she'd unearthed something explosive. "I've been cross-referencing Vincent's journal with his firm's financial records. It wasn't easy. His accounts were a maze of shell companies and offshore transfers, but I found a name." I opened the folder, my pulse quickening. Pages of bank statements, emails, and handwritten notes stared back at me, but one name stood out, repeated in bold: Damien Holt. My breath caught. Damien, Vincent's business partner, his closest friend, the man who'd stood beside me at the funeral, his hand on my shoulder, murmuring condolences. "Damien?" I said, my voice barely audible. He was Vincent's mentor. They built the firm together." Eleanor nodded, her expression grim. "And he's the one who orchestrated everything. Vincent's affair with Sienna, the forged will, Ethan's manipulation, it all traces back to Damien. He wasn't just complicit, Nora. He was the architect." The room spun, the walls closing in. I gripped the folder, my knuckles white. Damien Holt, with his silver hair and tailored suits, his voice smooth as whiskey, had always been a fixture in our lives. He'd hosted us at his penthouse, toasted our anniversaries, even helped Ethan get his first internship. How could he be the enemy? "Why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What did he want?" Eleanor tapped a page, a bank statement with staggering figures. Power, money, control. Vincent's journal mentions Damien pushing him to siphon funds from clients, to create false returns. When Vincent wanted to stop, when his conscience finally kicked in, Damien threatened him. Said he'd expose the affair, ruin Ethan's future, destroy you both. Vincent was trapped. I stared at the numbers, my mind reeling. Millions of dollars funneled through accounts I'd never known existed. Vincent's confessions had painted him as weak, but this was calculated, ruthless. "So Sienna?" I started, piecing it together. "A pawn," Eleanor said. "Damien used her to keep Vincent in line. She thought she was winning, but she was just another piece on his board. The will was Damien's idea, too, designed to cut you out and secure the firm's assets under his control." Teresa leaned forward, her voice soft but firm. "Nora, this isn't just about the house anymore. Damien's been stealing from clients for years. If we can prove this, we're not just saving your home. We're bringing down a criminal." My hands shook as I closed the folder. Damien's face flashed in my mind. His easy smile, his polished charm. He'd sat at our dinner table, laughed with Ethan, called me family. And all the while, he'd been dismantling my life. The betrayal wasn't just Vincent's anymore. It was bigger, darker, a web spun by a man I'd trusted. Anger surged through me, hot and sharp, drowning out the pain. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice steady now, fueled by a resolve I hadn't known I possessed. Eleanor's eyes met mine, a spark of approval in them. "We build a case," I've already contacted a lawyer who specializes in fraud. We'll need more evidence, emails, recordings, anything tying Damien to these transactions. But with the journal and these records, we have a start. Nora, this is going to be a fight. Damien's powerful, connected. He won't go down easily. I nodded, the weight of her words settling in my chest. A fight. I'd never thought of myself as a fighter, not the Nora who'd spent 30 years as a wife, a mother, a supporter in the background. But that Nora was gone, burned away by Vincent's lies and Damien's schemes. I'm ready, I said, and I meant it. He took everything from me. I want him to pay. Teresa reached for my hand, her touch grounding me. You're not alone in this, Nora. We're with you. Eleanor gathered her papers, her movements precise. I'll start pulling more records. In the meantime, stay low. Don't contact Ethan or Sienna, not yet. If Damien gets wind of this, he'll cover his tracks. She paused, her voice softening. You're doing the right thing, but it's going to get harder before it gets easier. As I left the office, the city buzzed around me, oblivious to the storm inside my heart. The drizzle had stopped, leaving the streets slick and reflective, mirroring the chaos of my thoughts. Damien Holt, the true enemy. Not Sienna's smug triumph, not Vincent's weakness, but a man who'd played us all like pieces in a game. I could still see his face at the funeral, his hand on my arm, his voice dripping with false sympathy. How had I missed it? How had I not seen the predator behind the mask? How do you trap a man who spent a lifetime dodging consequences? Damien Holt had orchestrated my ruin, pulling strings from the shadows while I mourned a husband who'd betrayed me. But now I had proof, a plan, and a spark of courage I didn't know I possessed. The battle was coming, and I was ready to strike. A week had passed since Eleanor unveiled Damien's role as the true puppet master. I was back in the motel, its peeling wallpaper and musty carpet a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. But the room wasn't just a refuge now. It was a war room. Papers littered the small desk, bank statements, emails, and notes from Eleanor's investigation, each one a piece of the puzzle we were assembling to bring Damien down. The air smelled of instant coffee and determination, the hum of the motel's ancient air conditioner a steady backdrop to my racing thoughts. Eleanor had been relentless, working her network of contacts to trace Damien's financial web. She'd uncovered more transactions, more shell companies, each one tying him tighter to Vincent's fraud. But proof on paper wasn't enough. We needed something undeniable, something Damien couldn't talk his way out of. That's where I came in. He's arrogant, Eleanor had said during our last meeting, her eyes gleaming with strategy. Men like Damien think they're untouchable. That's our advantage. We'll use his ego against him. The plan was simple but dangerous. Lure Damien into a confrontation, get him to admit his role and record it. Eleanor's lawyer had connections with the police, who were ready to move if we could deliver hard evidence. But it meant putting myself in the crosshairs, facing a man who'd manipulated my family for years. My hands trembled at the thought, but I pushed the fear down. Damien had taken my home, my son, my trust. I wouldn't let him take my fight. I spent days gathering evidence, combing through Vincent's journal for details I'd missed. One entry stood out, written in a shaky hand near the end. Damien keeps records in his office safe. If I ever turn, he'll destroy me. It was a long shot, but if we could access those records, we'd have everything we needed. I shared it with Eleanor, who nodded thoughtfully. We'll focus on the recording first, she said, but if we can get you into his office, even better. The setup began with a call. I dialed Damien's private number, my heart pounding as the line rang. I hadn't spoken to him since the funeral, when his false sympathy had felt like a slap. Nora, he answered, his voice smooth, almost amused. What a surprise! To what do I owe this call? I swallowed, steadying my voice. I want to talk about the will, Damien. I know it's not what Vincent wanted. I have questions. A pause, then a low chuckle. Questions? Nora, it's all legal. You've seen the documents. But if you insist, come to the villa tomorrow night. I'll be there, handling some of Vincent's affairs. We can talk. The villa. My stomach twisted. He was already claiming it, walking through my home as if it were his. But I agreed, keeping my tone meek, submissive, the grieving widow he expected. "Tomorrow, then," I said, and hung up before my nerve faltered. I pressed record on the small device Eleanor had given me, testing it one last time. Its red light blinked, a silent promise. That night, danger came knocking. I was reviewing notes when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I answered, cautious. "Nora Callahan?" A man's voice, low and rough, like gravel. "You're digging into things you shouldn't. Drop it or you'll regret it." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I demanded, but the line went dead. I stared at the phone, my hands shaking. Damien knew, maybe not everything, but enough to send a warning. I called Eleanor immediately, my voice tight with panic. "Someone just threatened me. They didn't say his name, but it's Damien. It has to be." Eleanor's response was calm, calculated. "He's rattled, Nora. That's good. It means we're close. I'm calling my contact at the police. They'll be ready tomorrow. Stay sharp and don't leave the motel tonight." Sleep didn't come. I sat up, the recording device in my hand, its weight grounding me. The threat had shaken me, but it also fueled me. Damien thought he could scare me into silence, just as he'd controlled Vincent. He was wrong. I wasn't the woman he'd underestimated at the funeral, clinging to a life that no longer existed. I was someone new, someone who'd learned to fight. The next morning, Eleanor and I met with Detective Larson, a gruff man in his 50s with a no-nonsense demeanor. He reviewed our evidence, the journal, the bank records, my account of the threat. "It's strong," he said, rubbing his jaw. "But Holt's slippery. If you can get him to admit anything on tape, we'll have enough for a warrant. We'll have officers nearby, but you'll need to keep him talking." I nodded, my resolve hardening. "I can do that." Larson handed me a burner phone, its number untraceable. "If anything goes wrong, call this. We'll move in." As I drove to the villa that evening, the sky was heavy with clouds, the air thick with the promise of a storm. The house loomed ahead, its windows glowing like eyes in the dusk. My heart raced, but my hands were steady as I slipped the recording device into my pocket, its edges cool against my fingers. I was walking into a lion's den, but I wasn't unarmed. I had the truth, and I had a plan. I knocked, the sound echoing in the quiet. Damien opened the door, his silver hair gleaming under the porch light, his smile as polished as ever. "Nora," he said, stepping aside. "Come in, let's settle this." The living room smelled of Vincent's cologne, a cruel reminder of the life I'd lost. Damien gestured to the couch, but I stayed standing, my eyes locked on his. "I know about the will," I said, my voice firm. "It's a lie. Vincent didn't want this." Damien's smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "You're upset, Nora. Understandable. But Vincent was clear. Ethan and Sienna were his choice." He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "You think you can fight this? The law's on my side." I pressed record, my thumb steady on the device. "I know you helped him, Damien. The accounts, the fraud. You made him do it." For a moment, his mask slipped, a flicker of surprise crossing his face. Then he laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "Careful, Nora. Accusations like that could get you in trouble." He stepped closer, his shadow falling over me. "You're out of your depth." Can a single moment undo a lifetime of lies? I stood in my own home facing Damien Holt, the man who'd orchestrated my ruin. His voice dripped with confidence, but I held a secret weapon, a recording device, and a plan to bring him down. The trap was set. Now I just had to survive it. The villa's living room was dimly lit, the chandelier casting jagged shadows across the hardwood floor. The air was heavy with the scent of polished wood and Damien's cologne, sharp and expensive, like the man himself. He stood across from me, his silver hair gleaming, his smile a blade disguised as charm. My hand rested in my pocket, the recording device warm against my palm, its tiny red light blinking silently. Every word he spoke was being captured, every syllable a step closer to his downfall. But my heart pounded so loudly I feared he could hear it. "You're making a mistake, Nora," Damien said, his voice smooth, almost paternal. He gestured to the couch, but I stayed rooted, my eyes locked on his. "Sit," Let's be reasonable. Vincent's will is ironclad. Fighting it will only embarrass you." I took a breath, steadying myself. The plan hinged on this moment, getting him to talk, to slip. Eleanor's words echoed in my mind. "He's arrogant. Use it." "I'm not here to fight the will," I said, my voice calm, deliberate. "I know what you did, Damien. The fraud, the accounts, Sienna. You didn't just help Vincent. You ran the show." His smile faltered, just for a second, a crack in his polished facade. Then he laughed, a low, mocking sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You've been reading too many thrillers, Nora. Fraud? Me? I'm a respected partner at the firm. Vincent was the one with indiscretions." He stepped closer, his shadow swallowing the light between us. "You're grasping at straws, and it's pathetic." My fingers tightened around the recorder. He was baiting me, trying to make me doubt myself, but I'd come too far to back down. "Vincent kept a journal," I said, watching his face. "He wrote everything, how you pushed him to steal from clients, how you threatened him when he wanted to stop, how you used Sienna to control him. It's all there, Damien, and I have it." His eyes narrowed, a predator sizing up its prey. The room felt smaller, the air thicker, as if the walls were closing in. "A journal?" he said, his tone mocking but laced with something new. Unease. "Vincent was sick, delusional. Anything he wrote is hearsay, Nora. No court will touch it." He leaned in, his voice dropping to a whisper. "You're alone in this. No one will believe you." My pulse raced, but I held his gaze. "I'm not alone," I said, my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my chest. "I have evidence, bank records, emails, and I know about the hidden clause in Vincent's will, the one you didn't expect me to find." That struck a nerve. His jaw tightened, and for the first time I saw a flicker of real fear in his eyes. "You're bluffing!" he snapped, but his voice betrayed him, a slight tremor breaking through. He stepped back, running a hand through his hair, his composure unraveling. "You think you can scare me? I've dealt with bigger threats than a grieving widow with a vendetta." "Then why are you here?" I pressed, stepping forward, closing the distance he'd tried to create. "If you're so untouchable, why meet me at all? You're afraid, Damien. You know the truth is out, and you can't stop it." He froze, his eyes darting to the side, as if calculating his next move. Then, to my shock, he laughed again, but this time it was bitter, almost resigned. "You want the truth, Nora? Fine. Vincent was weak. He wanted to play the hero, confess everything, save his soul. I couldn't let that happen. The firm, my reputation, my life, it was all on the line. So yes, I pushed him. The accounts, the will, Sienna, it was necessary. And you?" He sneered, his voice venomous. "You were collateral damage. Nothing personal." My blood ran cold, but I kept my hand steady on the recorder. He'd said it. He'd admitted it. My heart surged with a mix of triumph and dread. This was the evidence we needed, but I was alone with a man who'd just confessed to destroying my life. "You ruined my family," I said, my voice low, trembling with rage. "You turned my son against me. For what? Money? Power?" Damien's smile returned, colder now, predatory. "For survival, Nora. You wouldn't understand." He reached into his jacket, pulling out a document. "Sign this. It relinquishes any claim to Vincent's estate. Do it, and I'll make sure you walk away with enough to live quietly. Refuse, and I'll bury you." I stared at the paper, my mind racing. This was his endgame. Silence me, erase me. But he didn't know about the police, the recorder, the trap we'd set. I took a step back, shaking my head. "I'm not signing anything." His face darkened and he advanced, the document crumpling in his fist. "You're making a big mistake," he growled. "I don't lose, Nora, not to someone like you." Before I could respond, a sharp knock echoed from the front door, followed by a voice loud and authoritative. "Police! Open the door!" Damien's head whipped around, his eyes wide with shock. The room seemed to freeze, the air crackling with tension. I pressed myself against the wall, my heart hammering as the door burst open and Detective Larson stormed in, flanked by 2 officers, their badges glinting in the dim light. "Damien Holt," Larson said, his voice like steel. "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy." He held up a tablet, the screen glowing with a transcript of our conversation, streamed live from my recorder to Eleanor's team. "We've got everything we need." Damien's face drained of color, his bravado collapsing like a house of cards. "This is a setup," he sputtered, backing away, but the officers were on him, cuffs clicking around his wrists. He turned to me, his eyes blazing with fury. "You'll regret this, Nora. You have no idea what you've started." I met his gaze, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "I know exactly what I've done. It's over, Damien." As the officers led him out, the villa fell silent, the weight of the moment settling over me. I sank onto the couch, my legs trembling, the recorder still clutched in my hand. Larson approached, his expression a mix of respect and caution. "You did good, Nora," he said. "This recording, combined with the journal and the hidden clause in Vincent's will, is enough to put him away for a long time. But we're not done. There may be others involved." I nodded, my mind already spinning. Others? The journal had hinted at accomplices, but Damien's arrest felt like a victory, a reclaiming of the life he'd tried to steal. Yet, as I looked around the villa, my home, now quiet but scarred by betrayal, a new unease crept in. Damien was gone, but his words lingered. "You have no idea what you've started." What else was out there, waiting in the shadows? How do you mend a bond broken by lies? Damien Holt was gone, his schemes exposed, but the cost of his betrayal lingered in the silence between me and my son. Ethan had turned against me, believing his father's poison. Now, with the truth in my hands, I wondered, could I reach him, or was our family lost forever? The morning after Damien's arrest, I sat in a small coffee shop across from the villa, the air thick with the scent of espresso and fresh pastries. The rain had cleared, leaving the city bathed in pale sunlight, but my heart was heavy. The recording device lay on the table, its red light long since faded, a silent witness to the victory that felt hollow. Damien was in custody, the hidden clause in Vincent's will uncovered, proving my right to the house. But Ethan, my Ethan, was still a stranger, his cold words from the funeral echoing in my mind. The real woman in Dad's life. I'd won back my home, but I hadn't won back my son. My phone buzzed. A text from Eleanor. "Ethan called. He's at the police station. Wants to see you." My breath caught. The station. Had he been caught in Damien's web too? Or was this something else? I grabbed my purse, the journal inside it a constant reminder of Vincent's sins, and drove to the station, my hands trembling on the wheel. The city blurred past, its skyscrapers and traffic a distant hum against the storm in my chest. I didn't know what to expect, but one thought anchored me. I had to try. For Ethan. For us. The police station was a maze of fluorescent lights and echoing voices, the air sharp with the smell of disinfectant and coffee. Detective Larson met me at the entrance, his gruff demeanor softened by a hint of sympathy. "He's in the waiting room," he said, nodding toward a glass door. "He's been here since dawn going through the evidence. Your son's shaken, Nora. Go easy on him." I nodded, my throat tight, and stepped into the waiting room. Ethan sat alone, hunched over a table littered with papers, copies of Vincent's journal, bank records, Damien's emails. His dark hair was disheveled, his eyes red-rimmed, as if he hadn't slept. He looked up as I entered, and for a moment I saw the boy he'd been, the one who'd run to me with scraped knees and tearful apologies. But then his face hardened, a flicker of the anger that had driven him to Sienna's side. "Mom," he said, his voice raw, barely above a whisper. He stood, his hands clenched at his sides, as if bracing for a fight. I read it, all of it. Dad's journal, the records, everything. I stayed still, my heart pounding. "And?" I asked, my voice gentle, afraid to push too hard. He looked away, his jaw trembling. "He lied to me. About you. About everything." He said you were unfaithful, that you drained our accounts. He showed me fake letters, bank statements. I believed him. His voice broke, and he sank back into the chair, burying his face in his hands. I believed him, Mom, and I hated you for it. The words hit like a punch, but they also cracked something open, a door I'd thought was locked forever. I sat across from him, my hands itching to reach out, but I held back, giving him space. Ethan, I said softly, your father was good at lying. He fooled me too, for 30 years. He looked up, tears streaming down his face, and the sight broke my heart. I stood there at the funeral, he said, his voice choked with sobs, with Sienna, saying those awful things. I thought I was honoring Dad, protecting his legacy, but it was all Damien. He used Dad, used Sienna, used me. He slammed his fist on the table, the papers scattering. How could I be so stupid? You weren't stupid, I said, my voice firm. You were manipulated. Damien and your father, they built a lie so convincing it tore us apart. But you're here now. You're seeing the truth. He shook his head, his sobs quieting, but his pain raw, palpable. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I turned my back on you. I let Sienna into our family, into our home. I'm so sorry, Mom. His voice cracked, and he buried his face in his hands again, his shoulders shaking. I couldn't hold back anymore. I reached across the table, taking his hand, his skin warm and familiar despite the years apart. Ethan, I said, my own tears falling now, you're my son. I never stopped loving you, even when it hurt the most. We've both been hurt, but we can heal, together. He looked up, his eyes searching mine, as if afraid to believe me. You mean that? After everything I did? I mean it, I said, squeezing his hand. We've lost enough. I won't lose you again. For a moment we sat in silence, the weight of our shared pain filling the space between us. Then Ethan stood, hesitating before stepping around the table to hug me. His embrace was tight, desperate, like he was anchoring himself to something real after years adrift. I held him, my tears soaking his shirt, the years of distance melting away. He was my boy again, scarred but here, and that was enough. We left the station together, the sunlight warm on our faces as we stepped outside. Ethan's car was parked next to mine, but he didn't move toward it. Can I come home? He asked, his voice small, vulnerable. Not to take anything, just to be with you. I smiled, my heart lighter than it had been in weeks. Of course, I said, it's your home too. What's left when the truth strips everything bare? I had my son back, my home restored, and Damien Holt behind bars. But Vincent's shadow still lingered, his journal a Pandora's box. I wasn't sure I wanted to open again. Yet something told me one final secret waited, one that could change everything. It was a quiet afternoon, 2 weeks after Ethan's tearful reunion at the police station. The villa felt alive again, its halls filled with the soft creak of floorboards and the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the kitchen. Ethan was upstairs unpacking the few belongings he'd brought from his apartment, his presence a balm to the ache that had haunted me for months. The legal battle was over. Damien's trial was set. The hidden clause in Vincent's will had secured my ownership of the house. And Sienna had vanished, her role as Damien's pawn exposed. I should have felt free, but I didn't. The journal sat on the living room table, its leather cover worn but heavy with secrets. I hadn't touched it since handing it to Eleanor, afraid of what else it might reveal. Vincent's confessions, his affair, his lies, his manipulation of Ethan, had already torn my world apart. What more could there be? Yet, every time I passed the table, the journal seemed to call to me, a whisper I couldn't ignore. Ethan had asked about it yesterday, his voice hesitant. Mom, is there anything else in there we need to know? I'd brushed it off, but the question lingered, gnawing at me. I sat on the couch, the afternoon light filtering through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the floor. My hands trembled as I reached for the journal, its weight familiar yet daunting. I opened it, flipping past the entries I'd already read, the ones that had shattered my trust. The final pages were different, written in a hurried scrawl, as if Vincent knew his time was running out. The date was a week before his death, when he'd been too weak to leave his bed. Nora, the entry began. If you're reading this, I'm gone, and you found the truth. I don't deserve your forgiveness, but there's one last thing you need to know. My breath caught, my fingers tightening on the pages. One last thing. I read on, my heart pounding as Vincent's words unfolded a secret I hadn't expected. He hadn't just manipulated Ethan or hidden his affair with Sienna. He'd discovered something bigger, a secret about the firm, about Damien, that went beyond fraud. Damien's tied to organized crime, Vincent wrote. He's been laundering money for years, using the firm as a front. I found proof, but I was too weak to act. It's in the safe, Nora. The real safe, not the one in my study. The one in the attic. The attic. My mind raced, a chill running through me. Vincent had never mentioned a safe in the attic, not in 30 years. I stood, the journal falling to the couch, and climbed the stairs, my footsteps echoing in the quiet house. Ethan's door was closed, music faintly audible from within. I didn't call him, not yet. This was something I needed to face alone. The attic door creaked as I pulled it open, the air musty and thick with dust. Sunlight streamed through a small window, illuminating boxes of old photos, Christmas decorations, and Ethan's childhood toys. I moved carefully, searching for anything out of place. In the far corner, behind a stack of crates, I found it. A steel safe, embedded in the wall, its keypad glowing faintly. My hands shook as I knelt before it, Vincent's words echoing. The real safe. What was the code? I tried the firm's founding year, 1995, like the study safe. Nothing. My fingers hovered over the keypad, my mind scrambling. Then I remembered Vincent's final entry, a cryptic note. Our beginning is your key. Our beginning, our wedding date, June 12, 1989. I typed 061289. The safe beeped and the door swung open. Inside was a single USB drive, its surface scratched but intact. My heart pounded as I took it, its weight light but monumental. This was it, the proof Vincent had died to protect. I hurried downstairs, my hands trembling as I plugged the drive into my laptop. Files filled the screen, spreadsheets, emails, recordings, all detailing Damien's ties to a criminal syndicate. Money laundering, extortion, even whispers of worse. Vincent had documented everything, a fail-safe he'd never had the chance to use. I sat back, my breath shallow, the truth sinking in. This wasn't just about our family or the firm. Damien's crimes reached further, deeper than I'd imagined, and Vincent in his final days had tried to make it right. I felt a pang of something, grief maybe, or pity, for the man I'd loved who'd betrayed me but left me this chance to finish what he couldn't. Ethan's voice broke the silence. "Mom?" He stood in the doorway, his face pale, as if he'd sensed the shift in the air. "What's wrong?" I turned the laptop toward him, my voice steady despite the storm inside. "Your father left us one last secret," I said. "It's about Damien, and it's bigger than we thought." Ethan sat beside me, his eyes scanning the screen, widening with every file he opened. This is huge," he whispered. "Dad knew all this? Why didn't he tell anyone?" "He was scared," I said, my voice soft, "and he was dying. But he left this for us, Ethan, to make things right." He looked at me, his expression a mix of awe and determination. "What do we do with it?" I closed the laptop, the USB drive still in my hand. "We take it to Eleanor and Detective Larson. This isn't just our fight anymore. It's about justice for everyone Damien hurt." What does it mean to come home when the past has changed its walls? I held Vincent's final secret, a USB drive that could topple an empire of crime. With Ethan by my side, I was ready to reclaim our villa, not just as a house, but as a symbol of the family we were rebuilding. But the shadows of Damien's world still loomed, and I wondered, could we ever truly be safe? The villa glowed under the late afternoon sun, its ivy-covered walls and wraparound porch a sight that once meant safety, love, home. Now, as I stood on the porch with Ethan, the USB drive tucked safely in my purse, it felt like a battlefield reclaimed, but not without scars. 3 days had passed since I'd found Vincent's last secret in the attic safe, proof of Damien Holt's ties to organized crime. Eleanor and Detective Larson were already moving, building a case that could dismantle a criminal syndicate. But today wasn't about Damien or his empire. Today was about us, Ethan and me, stepping back into the life we'd almost lost. Inside, the air was warm, tinged with the faint scent of lavender from the candles I'd lit that morning. The living room was as we'd left it, Vincent's portrait still above the fireplace, his painted smile less a lie now, more a bittersweet memory. Ethan set his duffel bag down, his eyes scanning the room, lingering on the couch where we'd spent countless evenings watching movies, the bookshelf crammed with his childhood favorites. "It's weird," he said, his voice soft. "Being back. It feels the same, but different." I nodded, my throat tight. "It is different. We're different." I touched his arm, grounding myself in his presence. "But we're here, together." He smiled, a small, fragile thing, but real. "Yeah, together." We spent the day settling in, a quiet rhythm of unpacking and rediscovery. Ethan hung his clothes in his old room, the walls still marked with faded pencil lines where we'd measured his height. I cleaned the kitchen, scrubbing counters that hadn't been touched in weeks, the act grounding me in the present. But the USB drive never left my thoughts, its weight a reminder of the danger still out there. Eleanor had warned me, Damien's arrest has stirred the hornet's nest. His associates won't sit quietly. Detective Larson had stationed an unmarked car nearby, but I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching from the shadows. That evening, Ethan and I sat at the dining table, a simple meal of pasta and salad between us, the first we'd shared in years. The clink of forks and soft hum of the refrigerator filled the silence, comfortable but tinged with unspoken questions. "Mom," Ethan said, setting his fork down, "what happens next? With the drive? With Damien's people?" I took a sip of water, steadying myself. "Eleanor's team is analyzing the drive. Larson says it's enough to indict Damien's key associates, maybe dismantle their operation. But it'll take time. For now, we stay vigilant. We live our lives, but we don't let our guard down." He nodded, his jaw tight. "I hate that Dad was part of this, that he dragged us into it." I reached for his hand, my voice soft. "Your father made mistakes, terrible ones. But that drive, he left it for us, Ethan, to make things right. We honor that by moving forward, not by carrying his guilt." He squeezed my hand, his eyes bright with a mix of pain and resolve. "You're stronger than I ever realized, Mom. I don't know how you kept going after everything." I smiled, my heart swelling. "I kept going for you, for us." As we cleared the dishes, a knock at the door startled us. My pulse spiked, memories of Damien's threat flashing through my mind. Ethan moved to answer, but I held up a hand, grabbing my phone to check the security camera feed Larson had installed. It was Teresa, her familiar face framed by the porch light, a bottle of wine in her hand. I exhaled, relief washing over me, and opened the door. "Nora!" Teresa pulled me into a hug, her lavender scent a comfort. "I figured you two could use some company and wine." She grinned, stepping inside, her warmth filling the room. Ethan hugged her, his smile genuine. "Aunt Teresa, you're a lifesaver." We sat in the living room, the wine untouched as we talked, about the villa, the case, the future. Teresa's presence was a reminder of the life I'd had before Vincent's lies, a life I was reclaiming piece by piece. But as laughter filled the room, a sharp sound cut through, a crack, like glass breaking from the back of the house. Ethan froze, his eyes meeting mine. Teresa's hand gripped my arm, her voice a whisper. "What was that?" I stood, my heart racing, and grabbed the burner phone Larson had given me. "Stay here," I said, moving toward the kitchen, Ethan close behind despite my protest. The back door's window was shattered, glass glittering on the floor, the night air seeping in. My breath hitched as I dialed Larson, my voice low. "Someone's here." Footsteps crunched outside, then stopped. Ethan pulled me back, his face pale but determined. "Mom, get behind me." Before I could argue, headlights flashed through the windows, and Larson's voice boomed from a megaphone. "This is the police! Come out with your hands up!" The tension broke like a snapped wire. Ethan and I crouched behind the counter, Teresa joining us, her hand trembling in mine. Outside, tires screeched, and Larson's team moved in, their shouts echoing through the night. Minutes later, Larson knocked, his face grim but reassuring. "It's clear," he said, stepping inside. "We caught one guy, low-level muscle, likely sent to scare you. He's not talking yet, but we're on high alert. You're safe for now." Safe for now. The words hung heavy as we thanked Larson and boarded up the broken window. Teresa stayed the night, sleeping on the couch, her presence a quiet strength. Ethan and I sat up, the villa's walls no longer a shield, but a reminder of the fight still ahead. "We can't stay here, can we?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "We can," I said, my resolve hardening. "This is our home, Ethan. We've fought too hard to lose it again. But we'll be ready. Cameras, alarms, whatever it takes." He nodded, his hand finding mine. "Together?" "Together," I promised. What grows from the roots of a broken past? The villa was ours again, Ethan by my side, but the weight of Vincent's secrets and Damien's threats lingered. As I stood under the apple tree we'd planted for our son, I wondered, could we nurture something new? Or would the shadows of betrayal choke our future? A month had passed since the break-in, and the villa was a fortress now. Security cameras blinking at every corner, motion sensors humming softly, a silent promise of safety. The air carried the crisp scent of autumn, leaves crunching underfoot, as Ethan and I worked in the backyard, pruning the apple tree that had stood sentinel since his birth. Its branches were heavy with fruit, red and gold against the fading green, a symbol of the life we'd fought to reclaim. But my heart was uneasy, the USB drive's secrets still rippling through our lives. Detective Larson had called yesterday, his voice steady but cautious. "Damien's associates are scattering," he'd said. "The drive gave us names, accounts, enough to cripple their operation. But some are still out there, and they know you're the one who started this." His words echoed as I clipped a branch, my hands steady but my mind racing. The syndicate was wounded but not dead. Ethan and I were safe for now, but for how long? "Mom, look at this," Ethan called, holding up an apple, its surface marred by a small dark bruise. He frowned, turning it in his hand. "It's still good, right? Just needs a little care." I smiled, his words a quiet metaphor for our family. "Exactly," I said, taking the apple. "We cut away the bad parts and keep what's worth saving." I met his eyes, seeing the boy who'd once climbed this tree, now a man learning to heal. Our reconciliation had been fragile at first, but it was growing stronger, rooted in shared meals, late-night talks, and moments like this. The tree's shadow stretched across the grass, its trunk scarred from years of storms but still standing. I touched its bark, remembering the day we'd planted it. Vincent laughing as Ethan, barely 2, toddled around with a toy shovel. That memory used to sting, tainted by Vincent's lies. Now it felt like a piece of the past we could reclaim, a foundation for something new. "This tree's been through a lot," I said, my voice soft. "Like us." Ethan nodded, his expression thoughtful. "I was thinking, maybe we could plant another one, for Dad. Not to erase what he did, but to, I don't know, start fresh." The idea caught me off guard, a spark of hope amidst the scars. "I'd like that," I said, my throat tight. "A new beginning." We worked in silence for a while, the rhythm of clipping and gathering grounding us. But as the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, a car slowed on the street beyond the fence. My pulse quickened, instincts sharpened by weeks of vigilance. Ethan noticed, his hand pausing mid-cut. "Mom?" he whispered, his eyes flicking to the gate. I grabbed my phone, pulling up the camera feed. A black sedan idled at the curb, its tinted windows hiding its occupants. My heart raced, memories of the break-in flashing through my mind. I dialed Larson's burner number, my voice low. "There's a car outside. It's not moving." "Stay inside," Larson said, his tone sharp. I'm sending a unit. Don't engage." The line clicked off and I motioned for Ethan to follow me into the house. We locked the doors, the villa's new alarms a cold comfort as we watched the feed. The sedan lingered for a minute, then drove away, its taillights fading into the dusk. False alarm, maybe, but it left a chill in my bones. Ethan's face was pale, but his jaw was set. "They're not done, are they?" he asked, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. I shook my head, my resolve hardening. "No, but neither are we." I pulled the USB drive from my purse, its scratched surface glinting in the kitchen light. "This started it and it'll finish it. Larson's closing in on the rest of them. We just have to hold on." He nodded, his hand finding mine, a silent vow. "We've got this, Mom, whatever comes." That night we sat in the living room, the apple tree visible through the window, its silhouette a quiet strength against the starry sky. Teresa joined us, bringing her warmth and a batch of homemade cookies, her presence a reminder of the family we'd rebuilt. Not just Ethan and me, but the friends who'd stood by us. We talked about the future, Ethan's plans to return to school, my idea to start a community garden, a way to give back after all we'd endured. But the sedan's shadow lingered, a reminder that our fight wasn't over. What does freedom feel like when you fought through a storm of lies? The villa was ours, Ethan and I stronger than ever, but the ghosts of Vincent's betrayal and Damien's crime still whispered in the shadows. As I stood under our apple tree, I wondered, could we finally let go, or would the past always hold a piece of us? 6 weeks had passed since the black sedan idled outside our home, a final scare from Damien's crumbling empire. The villa was quiet now, its security systems a silent guardian, the air filled with the warm scent of cinnamon from the apple pie cooling on the kitchen counter. Ethan was in the backyard raking leaves under the apple tree, his laughter mingling with the rustle of autumn. The sound was a gift, a reminder of the life we'd rebuilt from ashes. But my heart still carried a weight, a question I hadn't dared voice. Were we truly free? Detective Larson had called that morning, his gruff voice lighter than usual. "It's over, Nora," he'd said. "The last of Damien's associates were arrested last night. The USB drive was the key, names, accounts, recordings. They're gone, and they're not coming back." Relief had washed over me, but it was tempered by caution, a habit born of months of vigilance. I'd thanked him, hung up, and stood in the kitchen, staring at the pie, its golden crust a small victory in a war that had cost so much. Now, as I joined Ethan in the backyard, the apple tree's branches swayed gently, its fruit picked clean but its leaves a vibrant red. He grinned, leaning on the rake, his face flushed with effort. "We should plant that new tree soon," he said, nodding toward a sapling we'd bought, its roots wrapped in burlap by the fence. "For Dad. For us." I smiled, my heart swelling. "Tomorrow," I promised, "a fresh start." The words felt real this time, not just a hope, but a truth we'd earned. The villa, the tree, Ethan's laughter, they were ours, reclaimed through pain and perseverance. But as I looked at the sapling, a final task tugged at me, one I'd avoided too long. Inside, I retrieved Vincent's journal from the living room shelf, its leather cover worn but no longer a threat. I hadn't opened it since finding the USB drive, afraid of what else it might hold. But today, with Damien's empire in ruins and Ethan by my side, I felt ready. I sat on the porch, the journal heavy in my lap, and turned to the final entry, one I'd skimmed but never fully faced. "Nora," Vincent had written, "I was a coward, but I loved you. Not perfectly, but truly. If you find this, know that I wanted to fix what I broke. Forgive me, if you can." Tears pricked my eyes, not for the man who'd lied, but for the one who'd tried too late to make amends. I closed the journal, my fingers tracing its edges. Forgiveness wasn't easy. It might never be complete, but holding on to anger was a chain I no longer wanted. I stood, walking to the apple tree, and placed the journal at its base, a quiet offering to the past. "Rest now," I whispered, to Vincent, to myself. Ethan joined me, his eyes curious but gentle. "You okay, Mom?" I nodded, wiping my tears. I am, for the first time in a long time. I took his hand, the warmth of his grip grounding me. We're free, Ethan, really free. He smiled, a weight lifting from his shoulders. Good, because I'm starving and that pie's calling my name. We laughed, the sound carrying across the yard, and went inside, the villa's walls no longer a battlefield but a home, alive with possibility. Teresa arrived later, bringing her warmth and a bottle of sparkling cider, her presence a reminder of the family we'd chosen. We ate pie, shared stories, and planned the new trees planting, each moment a step away from the shadows.